Okay, good afternoon again. This is our last panel.
We're not all here.
Oh, excuse me. Can everybody hear?
Okay, this is our last panel. It's titled Toward Remedy and Prevention of Workplace Mobbing. And you'll see with the titles of the presentations that it connects to the previous panel. So we have two speakers. The first one is Karen Moustafa Leonard, and her presentation is titled Why Mobbing, which is a good question. And the second presenter is Maritza Reyes of the FAMU, and her presentation is called A Self-Represented Attorney's Experience with Workplace Mobbing as Part of Her Federal Case Strategy.
Wow.
So, yeah, so you see the connection with the previous panel, yeah, and I think that Richard will be interested. Okay, so the floor is yours, Karen.
Eve, sorry. Before
Thank you.
tell everybody online that
And I'm going to share my screen with you.
Oh, excuse me, Karen, can wait just a second?
can
Sure.
you tell online that at 3:50 not to run away,
Okay.
that we have an organizational
Okay,
meeting.
this is a message for people online. At 3:50, don't go away because we have a meeting, an organizational meeting from 3:50 to 4:30. And the theme of the meeting is toward an association for researchers on workplace mobbing. So please stay online.
We need the
Okay.
Karen, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Let me try to figure out how this is going to work. Just a minute. Share my screen. I hope you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can.
All right. I'm at the University of Arkansas Little Rock. I've been in academia for 20 years. For 26 years, I was actually, I'm trying to get to the next one here. I'm having a little trouble.
We can hear you and we see your screen.
Okay. Sorry, I'm figuring this out.
Don't worry.
Okay. All right. I've spent 26 years in the healthcare industry where nurses eat their young. 20 years in academia. So as you can tell, I've had a few years on me. I have a personal experience of bullying, mobbing, and a personal experience of management because I was manager in healthcare for 20 of those 26 years. And I've also had experience in counseling people who have been mobbed or bullied, working with unions, working with corporations, working with individuals. So it's been kind of interesting. I ended up at University of Arkansas Little Rock, and it's like heaven compared to my last place of work, which you can look up if you're interested, and where I was mobbed. Luckily, I had the backing of my chair and my dean, although not the provost. We went through equal employment, opportunity, counseling stuff, and I decided not to go that route. Instead, I decided to sue them through the university process. I guess you wouldn't call it suing, using the ethics rules that they had there. And I said it was an ethical violation for the way they treated me. And I asked for these 3 guys to be fired because I wanted reprimands on their files. And I got it. It was hard. I ended up pretty sick at the end of it, but I was pleased with myself. because I had actually fought for the first time in my life, really. And I had not really experienced much bullying and mobbing before that. And I had seen it, I had stopped it, but I hadn't experienced it. The only instance of kind of bullying, mobbing I've had here at the University of Arkansas Little Rock is when I was chair and I had to call a professor down because he was bullying a couple of people and trying to mob them, but he couldn't get enough backing. And I had to call him in my office and tell him I wasn't going to have it. So, this is an interesting conference for me because I realized that there are two reasons for mobbing. First is managers allow it. It's the manager's responsibility for their area. If you're a CEO, of course, it's a whole corporation. If you're the department chair or the manager of a department, that's what you're responsible for. And when you get into academia, the chancellor is responsible, and then the provost. The other reason is that it's contagious. I'm an organizational behavior specialist, and so I study emotional contagion. I found it interesting that marketing studies social contagion as why people buy what they buy and that kind of thing. Doctors, the medical field studies social contagion in why certain medicines are adopted. And we can see that with the Wegovy and the Ozempic challenge right now. So emotions are contagious. If I walk into a conference and I'm mad and I'm throwing stuff or in my classroom, I'm going to get a different classroom than if I go in and I'm cheerful. I like what I teach, so why wouldn't I be cheerful? It's an interesting organizational behavior study, this idea of emotional contagion. The management issue I can cover pretty quickly. Many managers just don't stop it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. Most managers don't realize that they can be held legally responsible. In other words, if I'm being bullied by my manager, I can actually sue my manager as well as the company. And the company does not have to provide legal support to that manager. Now, that's in the US. I don't know how this works other places, but a lot of people don't know this. And this last part is very helpful to know. I was working with a corporation who had already had instances of bullying at other production facilities. This was a design facility. And one stands out to me to this day. I mean, they were bullying everybody. They were bullying young white men, older white men, African Americans, any ethnic group, women. So this woman was Cambodian. And they decided because she was better qualified than the men she was working with, the men decided to try to get her out of there. And they put a picture of a groundhog with their head cut off on her desk and started calling her groundhog. They followed her around the facility anytime she went anywhere, including to the bathroom. They would stand outside and clock how long it took her. Needless to say, it accelerated because nobody stopped it. Twice her tires were slashed in the video monitored parking lot. Funnily enough, those were the 2 days that their video didn't work. Is any of this surprising to you?
No.
Okay, so I was dealing with her. She finally decided to quit, and sued the company. And she got quite a bit of money from the company. I never asked her how much, but it taught me a lot about how to complain. And I give that to my students. You need to be specific. You need to give at least 3 instances of when this has happened to you, and you need to say what you want done about it. And then you need to hold their feet to the fire. And that's hard. It's hard, especially when you're an immigrant, and you don't have very many emotional resources to depend on in this country. So anyway, that was like the saddest one, but they were bullying everybody in the company. It was a nightmare. So I was working with the union because the company called me in, and when I agreed that it was bullying and mobbing, the company told me they didn't need my services any longer. The union asked me if I would work with them, and so I did. I helped a lot of people write complaint letters. And then the union asked me to attend a meeting with the new general manager of the plant, of the design center. Sure. So I go in, I'm sitting there with the HR person, and I'm sitting there with the union representative for the area. And I told the general manager, I said, you've got a huge problem with bullying and mobbing and incivility and rudeness and the whole 9 yards. And I said, and it's your responsibility because they can sue you. And he says, I didn't know that there was a problem. And he looked at his HR manager, and I could see just anger because she had been keeping it to herself, all these letters and everything that she had been getting. So he quit. I thought that was a wise move on his part. What the company decided to do, because where I was working was Indiana, and Indiana was a unionized state at the time. I don't know if it still is. They moved the plant to Illinois, and anybody that was in the union was not asked to transfer. So that's how they play those games. It's been long known that emotions are contagious, and there's a lot of work in marketing on this. And looking through the research and all, it's just fascinating to see how much work there is outside of management on this contagion part. What leads to this contagion is that events are discussed with others. I mean, I've told my stories to all my students, right? I could tell them about the harassment at Denny's, where my husband, who was the Moustafa of my name, was an Egyptian, and they wouldn't serve us. They finally had to, because we were the only persons who hadn't been served, and it looked really bad. People were wondering. And then another Denny's where, because my husband loved Denny's, where we both ordered shrimp, and mine was cooked and his was raw. It's often a pattern of behavior among a group. So when we talk about mobbing and bullying and stuff, it's a group behavior generally. Lack of retaliation. Nobody's retaliating. Nobody's telling them this is wrong. And the manager tolerates this. So it starts a lot of times with just simple incivility. Nobody stops this. In fact, I was taking physical therapy following an injury, and the physical therapists were all young people, and they were kind of teasing each other. And I warned them. I said, I know you're teasing each other and I know you like each other, but you need to be careful because this can be rude. This can be incivility, and it can escalate if one of you gets mad. And I came back the next time for my treatment, and they said, we thought about what you said. So I was pleased with that. And it's not always toward a target that's considered weak or a victim. I don't like the use of victim when we talk about incivility, harassment, bullying, because the person's not a victim. They've been made a target. Now, how they react to being made a target may make them a victim. But I've never been a victim. So, how do you solve this? And my idea is that you make it very clear what management responsibilities and the repercussions that can occur. And they're ethical and legal. And as many of you have talked about, them being ethical and legal, and you've talked about them being productivity driven. I mean, that's the best reason not to have incivility to begin with, much less mobbing and bullying and all the other. Absenteeism, turnover, neglect, or quiet quitting, as they're calling it now. And I do a human resource analytics and metrics class. And although I worked as an HR manager for a time, I myself was surprised at the cost of absenteeism and turnover when you actually calculate everything that's involved. I use Casco's, CASCIO. I use his work, and they have a free software module that you can get, and you can use it even if you're not in academia. And I have them calculate the cost, and it's just astounding. So that's my take on what you can do. It's not in depth, and I hope you found some use for what I've got to say. Working so long has given me the idea that some people have no empathy for other people. And, they have sort of a sociopathic type of personality. Now, this doesn't mean they're going to go kill somebody. I'm not talking about that. But they just have a lack of empathy. They don't understand other people. They don't understand that other people can get hurt. And they don't understand the repercussions of other people getting hurt. They can be quite costly. So, just a few things to think about. I've been very interested in this conference. I've worked on bullying for quite a while, and have had trouble getting published actually, because I don't fit in the mainstream.
Karen, you still have 7 minutes at your disposal, so do you want to use them?
No, I'll give those to Dr. Reyes.
Okay, well, thank you very much.